Well, hello YouTube. Welcome to Monday's edition of The Breakfast Club. I'm Got That Funk. I want to thank you for joining me, and I want to thank Sister Danger for bringing up an interesting topic of conversation. It's been good so far, and I don't want to step on her toes too much with my opening statement here, but I can't help but point out that so far everybody in the group, to some degree, has related their feelings about what compliments are and their function and stuff directly to how they experience and perceive compliments themselves. And from my point of view, my own feelings about compliments are completely immaterial to the discussion about whether or not certain types of compliments are compliments, and timing and context and so on, intention all matter and all that kind of thing, and I'll get into that in a bit. But I just want to point out a couple things, and pardon me if I have a roundabout way of going about this, but I mean, if you look at an insect on the ground, it doesn't look particularly threatening. Some of them are quite pretty even. But if you look at an insect under a microscope, it's a fucking monster. If you describe sex medically, it's disgusting, but it's the most beautiful thing in life. I think it's important to maintain perspective, and sometimes it's not necessarily a great idea to put things under a microscope and look at them because they are just natural parts of how human beings interact. And anthropologists will tell you that the giving and receiving of gifts is how human beings have traditionally interacted for millennia. And giving compliments is one of those types of gifts. It's been going on in our cultures now since time out of mind. And more than likely before civilization was really civilization. It is a part of what we are, and I don't think it's a good idea to sort of flush that down the toilet. On the other hand, I do think it's important to recognize that social mores exist, and to a certain degree I think they ought to be respected. The thing is, there's no set rules for any of this stuff. Everybody has their own red line, I suppose, that they don't want crossed. I think it's interesting that when people receive compliments, if the person that's giving the compliment is somebody that they might be interested in, if they had the opportunity to be interested in, they tend to receive the compliment better than if it was from someone who they thought was unattractive or unappealing or somehow brash or coarse or whatever. So it's not necessarily the compliment. You got to take everything into consideration: the context, the intention, the mood of the person receiving the compliment. All these types of things matter. And so, like I say, but you don't have to put it all under a microscope and try and dissect it, because if you look at anything under a microscope, you're going to find flaws. You're going to find ways to look at it in a bad way. But there's also plenty of ways that we can look at this in a good way. Compliments can make people feel amazing. Sometimes people are quite receptive to compliments, and sometimes people aren't. And sometimes people doing the complimenting can't tell the difference. It's a fact of life, and I think we shouldn't necessarily lose our shit about it, but there is such a thing as harassment. Like I said, I think before, certainly to consume, I've said before that from my point of view, street harassment is catcalling and wolf whistling and that type of thing. Anything that makes someone feel uncomfortable to the point where they feel they might be in danger, is going too far. And hopefully the lion's share of actual compliments don't fall into that category. I think there is an aggressive way that some people do. They think they're making a compliment, but they're being overly assertive in the process, and it's not perceived as a compliment. And in my opinion, if it doesn't make someone feel good, it's not a compliment. You can't call it a compliment anymore. Intention stops mattering if you say something and it hurts someone's feelings or makes someone feel scared or unsafe. Then you can't really call that a compliment anymore. You've said something else. That's my opinion. So, like I say, there's no set rules. No one's totally right or totally wrong about how they perceive being complimented or giving compliments out. We do have to, I think, respect the social mores insofar as, there's no law written, but at the same time you understand that these have developed over time and they exist for a reason. There's such a thing as a good time and a good place, and there's such a thing as not a good time and a good place. And the intention of a compliment ought to be to make someone feel good, and if that's not what happens as a result, then I think you sort of blew it. There we go. Anyway, I want to thank you guys again for a very interesting discussion. I'm looking forward to Sister Danger's wrap-up. And I will see you again next week here in the Breakfast Club on Monday. Until then, thanks for watching, and may all your ups and downs be ups.